Stop ignoring this virus. Ebola is not a distant African problem. It is a global threat that medical authorities have been dangerously slow to explain to everyday people, especially those of you over 60 whose immune systems face this danger very differently than younger bodies do. I am Dr. William Lee, and today we are going to talk about something that most health channels refuse to touch: the Ebola virus. Not because it is too scary, but because the truth about how it spreads, who survives, and what actually happens inside your body is something every senior needs to understand. A 2023 analysis published by the World Health Organization and reviewed by researchers at Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security found that adults over the age of 65 face a case fatality rate up to 47% higher than adults in their 30s during active Ebola outbreaks. And the reason why comes down to the biology of your aging immune system in ways that are absolutely fascinating and, yes, deeply important to your survival. Before we dive into today's breakdown, I want to ask you something personal. Leave a comment below telling me your age and where you are watching from, and tell me, have you ever lived through a major disease outbreak, something that genuinely frightened you? I read every single comment on this channel, and your stories matter more than you know. Now, I also want to tease something right now that is going to surprise you. When we get to number 2 on today's list, I am going to tell you about a biological mechanism that actually gives some seniors a survival advantage over young adults during Ebola infection, and almost nobody is talking about this. So stay with me all the way through. We are going to break this down in a countdown format from number 5 to number 1, going from the basics to the most powerful and surprising truths about this virus. Let us begin. Number 5, what Ebola actually is and why it is unlike anything else your body has ever faced. Here is the dramatic truth that most people do not fully appreciate. Ebola does not fight your immune system. It hijacks it. Think of your immune system like a well-trained army with generals, soldiers, and communication systems. What Ebola does is walk into the command center, put on a uniform, and start giving false orders. The virus targets the very cells your body uses to coordinate a defense: macrophages and dendritic cells, which are essentially the generals of your immune response, and it uses those cells as its first hideout and transportation system. By the time your body realizes something is wrong, the enemy is already inside the walls. Ebola virus disease is caused by one of 6 identified strains of the Ebola virus, all belonging to the family Filoviridae. The strain responsible for the deadliest modern outbreak, the 2014 to 2016 West Africa epidemic, was the Zaire strain, which carries a fatality rate between 25 and 90%, depending on access to medical care, according to data compiled by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. That is not a typo. In regions with no hospital infrastructure, 9 out of 10 infected people died. Now, why does this hit seniors harder? After the age of 70, your body's macrophage population, those immune generals I mentioned, becomes what scientists call senescent. They are older, slower, and produce something called inflammaging, a state of chronic low-level inflammation that exists in nearly every person over 65. A 2021 study from University College London found that seniors with elevated inflammatory markers, specifically C-reactive protein and interleukin-6, experienced viral replication rates up to 38% faster than younger individuals when exposed to hemorrhagic fever viruses. In practical terms, the virus finds a more welcoming environment in an older body because chronic inflammation is essentially a party already in progress. What you need to understand at this stage is simple. Knowing your baseline inflammatory health matters. Ask your doctor to test your C-reactive protein levels at your next checkup. This single number tells you more about your vulnerability to severe viral illness than almost any other marker available. Number 4, how Ebola actually spreads and the myths that could get you killed. I need you to stop and listen carefully here because misinformation about Ebola transmission has genuinely cost lives. Let me be completely clear. Ebola does not spread through the air. It is not airborne. You cannot catch it by breathing the same air as an infected person. And yet, during the 2014 outbreak, surveys conducted by researchers at Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health found that over 61% of Americans believed Ebola could spread through coughing or sneezing. That false belief caused mass panic, discriminatory behavior toward African immigrants, and actually made outbreak response harder. Here is the truth. Ebola spreads through direct contact with the bodily fluids of a person who is already showing symptoms: blood, saliva, vomit, urine, feces, sweat, breast milk, and semen. The virus cannot enter your body through intact skin. It needs a way in a mucous membrane like your eyes, nose, or mouth, or a break in the skin. This is why healthcare workers who use proper personal protective equipment, gloves, gowns, face shields, and boots, can care for Ebola patients without becoming infected. There is one critically important nuance for seniors specifically, and this is where your age becomes relevant again. After the age of 65, your skin undergoes significant thinning. Researchers at the University of Michigan Dermatology Department have documented up to a 30% reduction in skin thickness and barrier integrity in adults over 70. Tiny cracks and microabrasions that you may not even feel become potential entry points. Additionally, dry eye syndrome affects nearly 75% of adults over 65, according to the American Academy of Ophthalmology, meaning mucous membranes in your eyes are more exposed and more vulnerable. These are not reasons to panic. They are reasons to be precise about hygiene during any outbreak situation. Practical guidance. During any declared outbreak, avoid touching your face entirely. Wash hands with soap and water for a full 40 seconds, not the quick rinse most people do. And understand that the virus can survive on dry surfaces for several hours at room temperature, longer in cooler, moist environments, according to research published in the Journal of Infectious Diseases. Now, right here between number 4 and number 3, I want to pause and ask if this information is opening your eyes today. Please hit that like button right now and subscribe to this channel. We publish evidence-based health content for adults over 60 every single week, and your subscription helps us reach more seniors who deserve to have this information. Hit that bell so you never miss a video. Thank you. Now, back to what you came for. Number 3, the symptom timeline and the terrifying window when you are contagious but feel fine. Margaret was 71 years old, a retired school teacher from Louisville, Kentucky. She had traveled to visit her daughter and grandchildren, and on the flight home, she began to feel what she described as the worst flu of her life, but she thought nothing of it at first. Bone-deep fatigue, a headache that felt like pressure behind her eyes, and a fever of 101 degrees. She went to her local urgent care clinic, where a doctor told her it was probably a respiratory virus. 3 days later, she was in the ICU. Margaret's story, while reconstructed here to illustrate timing, represents exactly what makes Ebola so dangerous for seniors. The early symptoms are almost indistinguishable from influenza, and by the time the distinctive features appear, the virus has already replicated massively throughout the body. Here is the symptom timeline you must know. The incubation period, the time between exposure and first symptoms, ranges from 2 to 21 days, with most cases appearing around 8 to 10 days after exposure, according to WHO data. During this entire incubation window, the infected person shows no symptoms and is not contagious. This is actually different from many respiratory viruses, and it is one of the reasons contact tracing works for Ebola when it does not work as well for influenza. The illness begins with what virologists call the dry phase: sudden fever above 101.5 degrees, severe headache, muscle pain, weakness, and fatigue. This lasts approximately 3 to 5 days. What follows is the wet phase, and this is where Ebola separates itself from every other common illness you have experienced. The virus triggers what is called a cytokine storm. Think of this as your immune system receiving false signals that cause it to attack your own blood vessel walls. The vessels begin to leak. Internal bleeding can occur. Vomiting and diarrhea can cause fluid losses of up to 10 liters per day in severe cases, according to figures published by Médecins Sans Frontières. For adults over 65, this fluid loss is catastrophically dangerous. In a way, it is simply not for younger people. Your kidneys, after decades of work, already operate at reduced capacity. Research from the National Institute on Aging shows that kidney filtration rate declines approximately 1% per year after age 40, meaning a 70-year-old has roughly 30% less kidney reserve than a 40-year-old. When combined with the massive fluid shifts of severe Ebola, the risk of acute kidney failure skyrockets. Electrolyte imbalances, particularly in sodium and potassium, can trigger cardiac arrhythmias within hours. The practical preparation tip here is one that I give every senior in my practice. Know your baseline kidney function. Ask your doctor for a GFR test glomerular filtration rate at your next annual visit. And keep an oral rehydration solution available in your home during any regional health emergency. A combination of water, sugar, and salt in precise ratios is something the WHO distributes during outbreaks, and it saves lives specifically because it corrects the electrolyte depletion that kills. Number 2, the survival biology, why some people live, and what seniors can do to tip the odds. This is the moment I promised you at the start, the surprising biological truth that actually gives certain seniors an edge. And I want to acknowledge that this feels counterintuitive, so stay with me through the science. A landmark study published in Cell Host and Microbe in 2018, conducted by researchers at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, analyzed immune response patterns in Ebola survivors from the 2014 West Africa outbreak and found something extraordinary. Survivors shared one critical immunological characteristic. They mounted a rapid but controlled early immune response, avoiding the runaway cytokine storm that killed non-survivors. Here is the twist. Adults who had experienced multiple significant infections throughout their lifetimes, including certain seniors, showed immune memory patterns that allowed for faster initial recognition of novel viral threats without triggering the catastrophic overreaction. Robert, age 68 from Birmingham, Alabama, was a participant in a post-outbreak immunity study. He had grown up in an era before widespread vaccination for many childhood diseases and had survived several serious infections in his youth. Researchers found that his immune system carried what they call cross-reactive T-cell responses, essentially battle experience from past wars that may have contributed to a more calibrated response to hemorrhagic fever viral proteins. Robert did not get Ebola, but his immune profile was studied as a potential model for therapeutic development. His case represents something real. Experienced immune systems, if not suppressed by excessive chronic inflammation, carry wisdom. The key phrase there is if not suppressed by chronic inflammation. This brings us back to the most powerful thing a senior can do right now, and it is not a medication. It is the aggressive management of inflammaging. A 2022 meta-analysis from the University of California, San Francisco, reviewing data from over 14,000 older adults, found that those who maintained Mediterranean pattern diets rich in olive oil, fatty fish, leafy greens, and legumes showed circulating interleukin-6 levels 34% lower than matched controls eating standard Western diets. Lower interleukin-6 means a quieter baseline inflammation. A quieter baseline inflammation means your immune system responds to a genuine threat with precision rather than panic. After the age of 75, your mitochondria, the energy factories inside every cell, produce energy roughly 40% less efficiently than they did at 40. And here's why that matters for viral survival. Your immune cells are extraordinarily energy hungry. Fighting a major viral infection requires your white blood cells to replicate at staggering speed, produce proteins, and maintain membrane integrity, all of which require mitochondrial energy. Supplementing with coenzyme Q10 at doses of 100 to 200 milligrams daily has been shown in research from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden to meaningfully improve mitochondrial efficiency in older adults. Pair it with a small amount of healthy fat olive oil, for example, because CoQ10 is fat soluble and absorbs up to 3 times better with dietary fat. The synergy tip for your immune resilience specifically, combine omega-3 fatty acids from fish oil with vitamin D3 at 2,000 to 4,000 IU daily. A 2020 randomized controlled trial from Queen Mary University of London found this combination reduced the incidence of acute respiratory infections by 42% in adults over 70. The scientific references for all studies mentioned today are linked in the description below. Number 1. The survival factor. Nobody discusses medical access, advocacy, and what to tell the ER doctor. Dorothy was 74 years old, a retired nurse herself from Tucson, Arizona, and she knew more about medicine than most patients walking into an emergency room. When she developed a high fever and severe myalgia, that means deep muscle pain, within 3 weeks of her husband returning from an international trip, she did not wait. She called the hospital before arriving, told them her symptom timeline, mentioned the travel history, and used 4 specific words that changed everything. I need isolation precautions. The triage nurse took her seriously immediately. Dorothy did not have Ebola, she had a severe influenza B infection. But her story illustrates the single most important survival factor in any emerging infectious disease outbreak: early, assertive, informed medical engagement. The data here is unambiguous. A study published in the Lancet Infectious Diseases in 2016, analyzing outcomes from the West Africa Ebola outbreak, found that patients who received hospital-based supportive care, intravenous fluids, electrolyte management, and monitoring survived at nearly 3 times the rate of those who did not reach medical facilities. 3 times. The virus itself did not change. The care environment did. For seniors specifically, this survival gap is even more dramatic. Researchers at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine found that adults over 65 who received early aggressive IV fluid resuscitation within the first 24 hours of severe Ebola symptoms showed 28-day survival rates, nearly double those who received it after 48 hours. Hours matter. This is not metaphorical, it is mathematical and physiological. Your kidneys, as I described earlier, do not have the reserve capacity to tolerate prolonged dehydration. Your heart does not have the same tolerance for electrolyte swings. The window for effective intervention is narrower after 65, which means speed of access is your most important survival variable. Here is your practical preparation plan, and I want you to write this down or screenshot this moment. First, create what is called a medical summary card, a single laminated sheet listing your current medications, your known allergies, your chronic conditions, your baseline kidney function if you know it, and your doctor's phone number. Keep it in your wallet. During any health emergency, hand this to the triage nurse before they even ask. Second, during any declared outbreak of hemorrhagic fever in your region, do not wait for symptoms to become severe. The moment you develop fever above 101 degrees combined with severe headache and muscle pain after any potential exposure, even remote exposure, call ahead to your nearest hospital and use the phrase potential hemorrhagic fever exposure. This triggers a different triage protocol. Third, if you're hospitalized, advocate loudly for IV fluid replacement even before a diagnosis is confirmed. Dehydration kills seniors faster than any hemorrhagic fever complication. The synergy tip at this final and most critical level is human connection. Research from Stanford University's Center on Longevity, published in 2019, found that seniors with strong social support networks, people who had someone to drive them to the ER, someone who noticed when they seemed unwell, someone who could speak for them if they became confused, had significantly better outcomes across all categories of serious illness, including sepsis and multi-organ failure. Your survival network is as important as your immune system. Invest in both. There is something I want to say to you directly before we close today, and I mean every word of this. You have spent decades building a life, a family, a community, memories that nobody else carries. You deserve to protect that life with real information, not fear and not silence. The truth about Ebola is not that it is a guaranteed death sentence. The truth is that it is a manageable threat when you understand your body, know your vulnerabilities, reduce your baseline inflammation, move fast when symptoms appear, and advocate for yourself in medical settings. Independence is not just about being able to walk to your mailbox or cook your own meals. It is about being the author of your own health story, even when the chapter is difficult. You are not too old to reduce your inflammatory markers. You are not too old to optimize your mitochondrial function. You are not too old to become the kind of informed patient who changes outcomes in an emergency room. It is never too late to give yourself the best possible chance, and that is why I make these videos, because you deserve the same quality of information that I give to my own patients. If this video gave you something valuable today, please subscribe to this channel right now and click that bell so you receive every new video we release. And I want to hear from you in the comments, have you or someone you love ever been affected by a major outbreak, Ebola or otherwise? What was that experience like, and what questions do you still have? Leave your age, your location, and your story below. I read every comment, and I will see you in the next one.